of research, the research process, which has not received considerable attention over time, and that is the methodological approach of doing systematic reviews and meta-analysis. This is very important because apart from taking stock of the existing knowledge on a particular topic, it also allows researchers to quickly spot potential pockets of trouble. Sometimes people who use research evidence to formulate policy, so that's policymakers or manufacturers and producers who use research evidence to produce tangible products or to develop processes and services, may not be able to identify potential outliers in research results. There have been cases in the past where certain products were developed based on overwhelming research evidence, which did not account for certain false positives and false negatives, and certain kinds of mishaps followed such applications of knowledge. So if we do regular systematic reviews and meta-analysis, it becomes easy to pick these kinds of, to avoid this kind of mishaps. And that's why we have decided to start with this topic this year. The Nigerian Young Academy is a unified platform for fine researchers and scientists and social scientists and people from humanities in the country. On average, our members are just under 40 or just around 40, because you cannot be up to 40 at the time that you join the academy. The website is at www.nigerianyoungacademy.org. You're always welcome to look us up on the internet. And as we speak, our call for membership for the year 2021 is out. It's available on our website. A simple Google search will direct you there. We welcome like minds to join us. We advertise annually for some prizes. The call is also out. It was released in the Punch newspapers a couple of days ago, precisely at the start of this week on Monday. So you're always welcome to put in an application to join our ranks. Having said that, I'm going to hand you over to the moderator this afternoon, who is going to direct the entire proceedings. We have a star-studded lineup of speakers. The moderator himself, I must say, is an expert in this methodological area. So I can bet that we have a very interesting and lively discussion to look forward to. I want to welcome you once again. Dr. Sonny, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I appreciate you. I also appreciate the Nigerian Young Academy for inviting me to moderate this particular, webinar. Thank you very much. So as the president rightly said, so we're just going to start, right away. But before we start, let me first tell us how we are going to, handle the whole, procedure of this particular webinar. The first thing we are going to do is to, read the citations of the speakers. That will be Dr. Ukwaja and Dr. Yunusa. After which we allow them to make their presentations. It will be first started by Dr. Kingsley, which will be followed by Dr. Yunusa. So I'm just going to go straight away to read the citation of Dr. Ukwaja. I hope I got his name right. Dr. Ukwaja is a physician, epidemiologist, public health expert whose interdisciplinary research interest lies at the nexus of tropical medicine, global and respiratory health. He combines approaches ranging from clinical, economic, epidemiological modeling to implementation of science. Most of his work focuses on operational research on tuberculosis and Buruli ulcer. He tries to quantify the burden of diseases or health events, as well as identify factors that could help make better decisions in scaling up evidence-based health interventions. His research also tries to bridge the gap in the translational pathway by providing policymakers with pragmatic and context-specific assessments of burden of diseases and impact of interventions in routine care. In addition, he's very skilled in conducting systematic analysis and meta-analysis of the literature. In all, overall, Dr. Ukwaja has over 130 publications in reputable international journals, including Lancet and New England Journal of Medicine. He also has a book chapter in Encyclopedia of Molecular Cell Biology and Molecular Medicine. Furthermore, he has he has made over 30 presentations in national and international conferences. His Google Scholar HI index is 60, and he has over 61,000 citations. You can agree with me that we've invited an erudite scholar to be with us this afternoon. So he has received so many grants that are supported by, organizations such as KNCV, Pan-African Thoracic Society, American Thoracic Society, and Royal Society of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene in the UK. He was a recipient of prestigious Professor Friday E. Okunofua National Young Scientist Prize in Health Sciences of the Nigerian Young Academy in 2018. He's also a consultant to the World Health Organization on the Global Tuberculosis Program on Tuberculosis EP Review, and he currently mentors junior researchers across Africa in a particular course titled Methods in Epidemiological, Clinical, and Operational Research course, which is organized by Pan-African Thoracic Society in South Africa. So that is a citation about Dr. Kingsley Kwaja. I'm going to go ahead to read that of Dr. Yunusa. Dr. Yunusa obtained his bachelor degree in pharmacy at the Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria in Nigeria. He also obtained his Doctor of Philosophy in Massachusetts College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences, Boston in the USA. He lectures PhD students. He also conducts health outcome research at the University of South Carolina College of Pharmacy. His interests are focused in evaluating clinical, economic, and humanistic outcome of health care interventions. He has experience in observational clinical trials, study designs, electronic healthcare database analysis, systematic review, meta-analysis, and cost-effective modeling. So those are the citations of our speakers for today. So without wasting much of our time, I'm going to call on Dr. Kwaja to please take the floor. Please, Dr. Kwaja, the Zoom is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yunusa, and thank you, Mr. President, for giving me this opportunity. I'll quickly go ahead to share my screen and begin my presentation. Okay, so I'll be presenting on systematic review and meta-analysis, a veritable tool in research. This is going to be the short outline of my presentation. So what is systematic review? Systematic review, briefly, is a scientific process that fits a pre-specified eligibility criteria. That is a scientific process where all empirical evidence that fits a pre-specified eligibility criteria are collected in order to answer a specific research question. So there are two key things in systematic review, which I want our viewers to understand. The first is that it is systematic, that is done according to a fixed plan or system. And the second, that it requires critical appraisal of a book or a research work. So generally, the features of a systematic review include clear objectives with predefined eligibility criteria for the studies to be included. It is explicitly reproducible. It has explicit and reproducible methodology. It requires a systematic search to identify the studies to be included. Assessment of validity of the findings of included studies needs to be done. And it also requires systematic presentation and synthesis of the findings of the included studies. And finally, it follows a fixed plan or system, that is, it's methodological. Generally, why do we conduct systematic reviews? The most important reasons why we conduct systematic reviews is to minimize the impact of bias and errors in the literature. It can help to end confusion about conflicting findings. Most times, some studies show results that are conflicting, some in favor of a medical treatment, for example, while others are against. When we pull them together in systematic review, it helps to end this confusion. It also highlights where there is no sufficient evidence. So it helps in guiding what is available in the literature, so that providing a solid background for those who want to apply for research grants, for those who want to for research grant application, and also for building a profile of a researcher. Okay, it involves combining findings from different studies, and it can highlight new findings. As we said earlier, when combined studies are combined together, it can generate new findings that can help end confusion of what is available in the literature. It can also help to mitigate the need for further trials. It may get published in high impact journal. Most systematic reviews that are well written most high impact journals are interested in their publication, and it gets lots and lots of citation. And finally, it will help showcase someone's research. But what is the major difference between a systematic review and narrative literature review? So the problems with narrative literature review, as we know them, is that they are not replicable or updated. They follow the bias of the writer, and it might be presented as a published opinion of the individual. You often miss small but important effects. Different reviewers can reach different conclusions about the review and is affected by the subspecialty of the reviewer. And there is little attempts to address differences, that is differences in the studies. That is what we call heterogeneity in the studies. So one of the important studies that help bring the bear the importance of systematic review in the literature is about a medication called Vioxx. This medication was withdrawn in 2004 because it was shown that individuals who take it for greater than 18 months have high risk of cardiac vascular risk. That is, most of them have high risk of developing heart attack in a very simple or literal form. So this was based on a randomized control trial that found that those who took this Vioxx for the prevention of colorectal polyps in patients with a history of colorectal adenomas, that many of them who took it for greater than 18 months developed a heart attack or increased their cardiovascular risk. So, and by 2004, this medication has been taken by close to 80 million people. So Juni, one of the authors that wrote this systematic review that is published in the Lancet in 2004, did a meta-analysis of about 18 studies and 11 observational studies and found that those who took this medication for had 2.3 times increased chances of developing heart attack. And those who took it for 1 year later, that is within 1 year, and 1 year later, the risk increased by up to 14%. And based on this finding, the author concluded that this medication should have been withdrawn several years earlier, but because of politics between drug manufacturers and licensing authorities, this was not done and called for the need to continuously monitor and summarize evidence about the medication. So this is a small forest plot about the medication. Most of the dots here represent whether there is a risk or no risk of heart attack. Overall, most of the black dots we see here all falls within likelihood of increased risk. But the confidence intervals, that is the range, falls across both ends, showing that literally, if what we are looking at is statistically ordinary, we will feel that there is no risk, except for one study here that developed showed that the confidence interval falls into the area of increased risk for this medication. But when the meta-analysis, that is a systematic review, was done, combining all these studies, the overall proof was that it increased the risk of heart attack by over 2%. There was more than 2 times increase in risk of heart attack when individuals use this medication, and that was the basis for which the medication was withdrawn. So generally, how do you plan a systematic review? It requires to form a team, and it is usually good to link it to a research study or a higher degree. Most master's degree programs now accept systematic review as in lieu of conducting a primary data collection for their thesis. So, and some systematic reviews are funded, so you can get some funding or support from your university or health or institution to conduct them. But generally, this is the flow chart of how to plan a systematic review. It requires the development of a protocol. Then you conduct a search to identify studies that you will be included, then extract data from each of the studies that has been included, assess the study quality, and then do a synthesis. You can just narrate what has been found, or you do a quantitative synthesis, what we call meta-analysis, and then you write the paper. So the process is not very cumbersome. It's just about 6-step process. But the first step is to develop a protocol, and it involves the following. You have to have what we call a review question, an inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria, the search strategy, data collection, you do assessment of quality, and study synthesis before the outcomes to be synthesized. So the first one of the so the protocol, once the systematic review protocol is ready, It is important that it is registered in a website called Prospero. You can Google this, Prospero for systematic review. It's an international register for systematic reviews protocols. You register a systematic review protocol to ensure that no two different researchers or groups are working on the same systematic review at a time in order to save cost and save resources. It's important to review that, go to this website and review the list of registered protocols before starting a new one. If a systematic review has already been done or a protocol has been registered, then it's likely that you should consider an alternative question. The second aspect of the protocol is what we call the review question. It involves 5 components, what we summarize as the PICOS statement. The first is the participant or the patient or the problem that will be addressed. Who is the patient or the problem to be addressed? The second is the intervention or exposure. The third is the comparator or the comparison group. The fourth is the outcome. And the fifth is the study design. So one of the question is, for example, in adults with HIV infection, this is the patient or the problem. Is 9 months treatment with this medication effective in reducing the risk of active TB, which is the outcome compared to placebo? These are the So this is how the question has been outlined into what we call the PICOS statement. Now, in order to conduct your search, you need to define sources to be searched, and you need to develop a process to document each of these steps. Usually, to conduct a search for the literature, a librarian is usually necessary. The most important thing, one of the most important things concerning the search of the literature in systematic review is that these are the popular databases available online. Many of us are aware of Google Scholar, PubMed, Scopus, Web of Science, and some subject specifics like the CINAHL, that is for nurses, the Site Info for psychiatric and psychological papers, and this cancer literature for cancer. This is for AIDS. It's generally advised that in conducting a systematic review, that we should start at least 6 databases just to ensure that we've covered the breadth of the available literature, the source of available literature. It's also important to check for the references of relevant articles and check for the references of existing systematic review. One of the ways of conducting a search is to ask, if you are conducting a search involving diabetes and hypertension, if you type diabetes and hypertension in the search platform, it gives you only any studies that contains both diabetes and hypertension. If you search for diabetes or hypertension, it gives you a combination of both. If you search for diabetes, not hypertension, it gives you only studies that mention diabetes without hypertension. Okay, so one of the next step is to screen for the studies. Usually, after searching for the studies, you now screen the title and the abstract to be sure that they are relevant. This usually requires 2 reviewers. You understand? 2 reviewers to screen for the available data. Once we've selected studies that are eligible or that we consider useful, some of the things we need to extract are the source of the data, the eligibility to confirm that it meets the requirements, the method used for the study, the number of participants, their age, sex, or diagnostic criteria, the intervention, the outcome, the results, and also the miscellaneous. So data extraction, like this undertaking systematic search, also involves the use of 2 reviewers, as I've shown here. And it could be done using paper-based or electronic platform. If you go to these websites that I highlighted here, and their sources are here, you can get electronic templates of data collection forms for systematic review. Once you've selected the study, there are standardized tools, or what is called quality assessment tools, to assess the quality of the studies to be included. At this step 2 requires 2 reviewers to complete the process, and agreement between the reviewers is important as in getting the studies published. And you may decide to remove studies from the review that have very low quality. So these are examples of quality assessment forms, and this one for cohort studies by the Newcastle Ottawa scale. And you can get these tools in the website highlighted here. And it was very important to highlight that in making systematic reviews, that you should show studies that you have made attempt to assess the quality of the study. This is for one of the reviews we've conducted, and we mentioned that we use this tool to assess the quality of the studies included. For a tool that there's no known quality or assessment criteria, we adopted a guideline suggested by one of the authors in assessing the quality of the studies we included in the review. Once we've completed the synthesis of the data, there are just two methods of assessing, of reporting the results. We have the qualitative description of the findings, which requires a narrative summary of what was found using tables and flowcharts, and then the quantitative synthesis, which is the meta-analysis. This will require the support of an experienced individual in meta-analysis to conduct, because what the earlier part of descriptive or qualitative synthesis or narrative summary of the findings can be done by anyone who is skilled in conducting research. You understand? Finally, we have also during part of the quantitative synthesis, when difference in results can arise due to differences in study design, population, study selection, even intervention. If the studies are not similar, then there is no need to pool the study. That is, if the studies are too heterogeneous in a meta-analysis. So bottom line in writing the systematic review is to stick to the protocol and reference it. If you publish it in Prospero, check the journal requirements for systematic review to ensure that it meets the guideline. Ensure quality reporting using the Prisma checklist. This is a guideline for reporting systematic review. And populate the flowchart using also the guidelines. So in summary, I've tried to provide a brief overview of what systematic reviews and meta-analysis entail. It is a simple and shortcut to research and requires limited resources. Just a limited laptop, internet, and one or two other persons can work together to work in a systematic review. And it could be designed to be completed within 3 months. And it remains an important veritable tool for research. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll be happy to take your questions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kwada. We really appreciate your well-detailed presentation that you just delivered to us. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to go to quickly discuss the presentation made by Dr. Kwada. What he did was to allow us to understand the difference between ordinary literature review and systematic reviews, beyond which he also told us how do we minimize bias in our study. I actually found very interesting the idea of bringing in the visual story to tell us the importance of conducting systematic review. That tells us how important systematic reviews are. He didn't stop there. He also gave us an idea of the protocols that are actually involved in trying to carry out systematic review. It made us to understand that in conducting review, you actually need a team that might be very difficult for an individual to go ahead to carry out a systematic review of the literature, which I actually found very, very instructive. Then I saw something briefly where he was telling us that we may also need to do a Gantt chart. That for me is very interesting because I never thought about that Gantt chart for writing papers. Then that probably explains why our speaker is very productive. For me, I've never done that, to be very honest. Maybe a mental Gantt chart, maybe, but actual Gantt chart to tell me how I progress within writing a paper now. Anyway, that's very interesting. I think I like the idea. So those are the things that the Dr. Kwada actually told us with regards to carrying out systematic review. So I'm going to call on Dr. Yunusa now to please present to us what he has for us on this platform. Thank you very much. Dr. Yunusa, the Zoom is yours. Dr. Yunusa, you are muted. Unmute yourself, please.
Okay. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can. We can see.
Okay. Good afternoon, my fellow Nigerians and other citizens of the world. Thank you, Dr. Ukwaja, for the beautiful presentation, which there might be some little overlap. Today, I would like to talk about systematic reviews, but under the subtopic, what are they? Why do we conduct them? And how do we conduct them? Oops. So the goals of our talk today is to discuss what is a systematic review? How different is it from a narrative review? Why is it important and how we conduct it? So a systematic review is more of a research synthesis that is conducted according to a clearly stated, scientific research method, and it's designed to minimize bias and errors that is inherent of the reviews who are used to a traditional narrative review. And it uses a transparent procedure to find, evaluate, and synthesize the results of independently conducted studies. And these procedures are explicitly defined in advance. That's why you need a protocol to assure that the process is transparent and can be replicated. For a meta-analysis, it's more of a combination of data from several independent primary studies that addresses the same question to produce a single estimate. So when you conduct a systematic, it's mostly, in most cases, it's part of a systematic review. When you conduct a systematic review and you find comparable studies that can be pooled quantitatively, then you go on to conduct a meta-analysis. So this is a quick historical overview of systematic review. Back in the 18th century, James Lind, considered the father of maritime medicine, critically reviewed a number of reports on the prevention and treatment of scurvy. But at that time, it was not called systematic review. Then there's a British epidemiologist called Archie Cochrane, who wrote a book called Effectiveness and Efficiency. And in that book, he criticized the doctors' collective ignorance about the effect of healthcare. And he said, it is surely a great criticism of our profession that we have not organized a critical summary by specialty, subspecialty, or updates periodically of all relevant randomized clinical trials. And then back in 1987, a review showed that, a short, inexpensive treatment with corticosteroid, which is a class of drug, it reduced preterm birth. And Cochrane also said that evidence showed that if you had conducted, systematic reviews 10 years earlier, you could have prevented, premature death. So this is the growth of systematic review over time. I can call it exponentially. This is from PubMed, from one in 1951 to, as of less than 2 months this year, you have 6,523 systematic reviews. How different is systematic review from a narrative review? When you talk about the research question, you strictly formulate in a systematic review, while in a narrative review, it's broad. Methodology is clearly stated, but narrative review, it's insufficient or you don't even have methodology. You have a search strategy, but you don't have in a narrative review. You have a clearly defined selection of studies, but you don't have that in a narrative review. And you rank, ranking of studies by levels of evidence. It's not performed in a narrative review. And analysis of study is clearly described, but you don't have that in a narrative review. And interpretations of results are more objective rather than subjective in a narrative review. So why systematic reviews? These are examples of certain problems. You can have studies of varied methodology. Then in a systematic review may review the findings from their respective methods and determine shared findings. You can have contradictory findings. So a systematic review may examine the findings from those multiple studies with the goal of exploring the disparities. Or you have a non-existence of synthesized studies which focus on a similar topic. Then you develop, a unified research report that depicts a synthesis of studies done on a particular topic or issue. Or there might not be a theory of a model. So you can conduct systematic review to develop a theory or model that represents a certain finding. Or you don't have a unified best practices. Then in order to determine those best practices, you conduct, a systematic review. So here is a summary of steps in conducting systematic review, which I think Dr. Ukwaja gave us a more detailed description. So first, you have an idea for a review. You search online databases or Prospero. And then you determine whether the topic has been reviewed or not before. Then you define your research question. You establish a team, you define a search strategy, you define a selection criteria, you design a data collection form, you collect all references and abstract in a single file, you run the search strategy in multiple databases. It's been required that you don't only go to Embase or PubMed, for example, at least 2 databases. So you write a protocol, for the review. You estimate duplicates. You have to remove duplicates because when you look at multiple indexing bibliographic databases, you might have duplicates. So you might remove duplicate articles, and you have at least 2 reviewers who would screen articles and collect, compare, select for retrieval. And then you retrieve full text and apply a selection criteria that you have determined a priori. You might sometimes contact certain experts. You search for traditional references. You make the final selection list and draw the flow chart. You apply a collection form in pairs. You evaluate the quality and risk of bias in the studies you're including, which is very important, and prepare for analysis. In the analysis, it could be descriptive, or when it's comparable enough to pool quantitatively, then you conduct a meta-analysis, and you can explore heterogeneity between studies. You might have heterogeneous study in terms of methodology, in terms of if it's individual studies, right? Some might be old age, some might be middle age. So you explore heterogeneity, and you check for the quality of evidence, and you need to update, report, and probably submit for publication. What are the pros? It helps you reduce bias. You can replicate. It solves controversy between conflicting studies, helps you identify gap in the current literature, and provide reliable basis for decision-making. Some disadvantage, you might still have an inconclusive findings, right? Because you might end up with just 1, 2 relevant studies, right? So the strength of the evidence might not, and maybe they are of low quality. There might be no studies or evidence, or the study may be of low quality. So systematic reviews, although it has been extensively used in the healthcare, and especially in clinical practice guidelines, it's popular in the social sciences, lots of public policy research, education, and of course, the umbrella of science, technology, engineering, mathematics. These are certain, I just provide these tools where one can conduct a systematic review. Some are for free, while some you need to subscribe. Ryan is free, EPI Reviewer is free, Abstract is free, RevMan by the Cochrane collaboration is free. I thank you for your time. I welcome questions. And I have these further reading references, which is a collection of systematic reviews from preclinical, or is it in engineering, education research, or clinical research? Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yunusa. That was right on time. We appreciate your presentation, which is also well detailed. Well, let me quickly go into the discussion of your presentation. I think Dr. Yunusa started by telling us, the history behind conducting, systematic review. He went in to tell us people that actually started the idea of, conducting systematic review, starting from James, then moving from there to Cochrane in 1972. I actually like the idea whereby he told us the importance of conducting, systematic by bringing in the idea of, the effect of still bat, that if people had actually conducted, systematic review 10 years earlier, they probably would have, avoided that particular, trouble. That for me was very, very, important. He now went ahead to tell us, to give us a detailed design of how to actually, carry out a systematic review, which I think is actually very, very detailed. And I'm also happy that this particular webinar is being recorded, so we can share this with our with our audience. This is a well-detailed, design on how to conduct, systematic review. So he also told us the pros and cons of, conducting systematic review. From there, he went ahead to tell us the applications that we could actually use to conduct, systematic review, which I think will also be available to our audience to look at once we are done with this particular, webinar. Thank you very much, Dr. Yunusa. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Simon. Thank you.
We appreciate your time for being with us right here.
Thank you.
So I think now that we have the two presentations, what we need to do now is to go into Q&A sessions, which I'm going to be alternating between Dr. Okwaja and Dr. Yunusa. So I think I'm going to, maybe before I go into Q&A, let me quickly add one or two things to what the speakers have said. With regards to protocol, what I've seen so far were tilted towards the sciences, the earth sciences, basically. But as Dr. Yunusa rightly said, most of this systematic review actually carried out in also social sciences. So there's a particular protocol that I think people from that background may also want to look at. It's called I think PRISMA protocol. So it has like maybe 11 checklists that people can actually go through to be able to conduct systematic review. For people in social sciences, I believe that they will find that very, 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 very useful. They should maybe, before we finish, I'll find the reference and put it in the chat box for our audience to look at. So I'm going to go into the question session now. And as I said, I'll start with Dr. Ukwaja. Sir, the first question. So please, what kind of researcher do you think are likely to possess the skill to be able to conduct a systematic review or metadata analysis? And do we really need to, make sure that people that have this interdisciplinary background are involved in carrying out systematic reviews?
Thank you very much, Dr. Maruf. Well, as we have seen from the two presentations, one thing that is common with systematic reviews is that it's a systematic process. It follows a systematic process. Any individual I believe that any individual who can conduct an original research can at least, with minimal guidance, perform systematic review. Let's look at it this way. You can consider it as part of what we used to call literature review in the olden days, when we're trying to write our thesis. It's still the same thing, it's just that this time you follow a more systematic process and you target it to a research question rather than bringing everything in that field to discuss it in the so-called literature review. When I started, the first systematic review I wrote was while preparing for a study. I was preparing for a grant application, and I drew a table highlighting all the studies that have been done in the field. And a professor in the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine who was training us saw it and said, "Did you do this here before coming for the training, or you did it here while on?" I said, "I did it before coming." He said, "But this can be done as a systematic review. So you have to try and publish this." That was my first systematic review. So the only process is that you outline each of the process you follow, and these steps that have been highlighted by myself and Dr. Yunusa. Once you do it, I think it is likely you will have minimal problem for the systematic review. But however, to be fair, in the meta-analysis, this requires quantitative synthesis. It requires a lot of mathematical. You will need someone who is skilled in the meta-analysis. However, there are softwares, if you are very good with regular data analysis, that you can also use, but you will still need some guidance so that you don't garbage in and garbage out something that is not ideal or that might not be right. So that is my belief. Anybody who is skilled in original research can perform systematic review up to narrative synthesis, narrative summary of what was found in the review, following the steps outlined in the systematic review process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kwaja. I appreciate it. I think the key word from what you said now is that one might actually need a guidance in trying to carry out systematic review. I'm going to build on that and ask Dr. Yunusa, please, what kind of capacity do you think a researcher will require to be able to carry out systematic review?
First of all, just as Dr. Ukwaja mentioned, you have to be familiar with primary research, because being familiar with primary research will help you even when you're during the systematic review, when you need to appraise the study, right? Even though there are checklists, for appraising a quality of a study. But even when you're not familiar with that, you will not be able to, do a high quality systematic review. So familiarity with primary research is very important. Of course, you need to have a team, right? So it's not about for something doing, by yourself, then it will be biased, right? Because you need to screen our 2 articles independently and come to discuss the discrepancies. So you need an additional person. You need to know primary research, and you need to have the tools at your disposal. Sometimes you may need a librarian to help you really look at, the difficulty in, searching for articles and finding certain articles. So in some cases, a librarian might be needed. And you need, nowadays, you once interacted with somebody who did systematic review when, you don't have the internet, you access in papers, right? Nowadays, you need an internet, to search in those bibliographic databases. So I think these are some few skills, few things one might need to, and I recommend somebody learning by doing, right? The learning curve is not steep. So just have somebody to guide you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Yunusa. Yeah. I'm going to go back to Dr. Ukwaja now. And please, what will you say will be the impact of conducting systematic review, maybe in the short or the long term for a researcher? Maybe impact on his career, for instance.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Sani. Well, in my opinion, one of the key impacts of conducting a systematic review is that it establishes you as an expert in that area, that sub-area, that research question, area of research where you're able to, because by conducting the systematic review, it is expected that you've gone over all the literature in that area, you've identified the strengths in that area, you've identified the weaknesses, and you've identified areas where further research is needed in that area. So it identifies you as an expert. It helps you to get publication if you're a researcher. It can also be an initial study in a grant application. If you are applying for a grant and there is evidence that you've done a systematic review in that area of your grant application, as far as the world is concerned, you are one of the experts in that area. You know what you are talking about when you are asking for a grant to build on the weaknesses you found in the research. And most importantly, is systematic reviews are in some universities are now considered almost the same as original research papers. They're not considered as a review, so they are graded as original research papers, some universities and some journals. So it attracts a lot of citation and it helps boosting the profile of the researcher. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ukwaja. I really like the answers you gave, most especially the one that has to do with the grant. I think that's very instructive because if you have done that, people are likely to look at you as an expert in that particular area. Thank you for that answer. I appreciate that. So Dr. Yunusa, please, at the end of the day, when we do systematic review, we are going to come up with some sort of, decisions or conclusions. How do you communicate with the policymakers for them to be able to see what you've done and to be able to make some, policies around that particular conclusion that you have?
Yes, first, I think publishing it, right? They can search the literature to see. Sometimes, let me give an example for maybe you develop a new drug, right? Persons in the United Kingdom, they have the NICE, National Institute for Care and Health Excellence, I think. So even when a drug has been approved back then by the European Medicines Agency, it's been required that you show evidence of clinical effectiveness and cost effectiveness. So companies would have to conduct a systematic review and sometimes need a meta-analysis to show evidence of those clinical effectiveness. And NICE would make a determination whether they reimburse the drug in the national health system or not. So it can be communicated directly to the policymakers or through research. And another one that I believe it's timely, it's an example like the current COVID-19 and vaccines. There are lots of studies talking about acceptability of vaccines and why some people do not accept. I saw a lot of cross-sectional studies. So policymakers may consult the literature to understand why, people are not accepting in order to improve access if they need. So these are a couple of examples. I think you can use the output.
Sorry, thank you very much, Dr. Yunusa. But let me quickly build on what you just said now.
Yes.
In this part of the world, I mean, in Nigeria, for instance, we understand that in many instances, our policymakers really don't go looking for literature. In many instances, they want something quick that they can look at and make their decisions from that. I'm not sure many of them really don't go ahead and start searching for scopus and say, okay, what do we have here? So they'll probably look for something that they could just quickly glance through, and make decisions. What would you recommend?
I recommend as more and more informed young people getting into the government who has, certain research-related background would start. I know it's not a one-day thing. It takes a little time. I encourage young people like us to participate so that we would be a future change in terms of not just what is the evidence, right? Everything is being done with evidence, right? Without evidence, you make lots of, what has been done before to guide me in making decisions. So honestly, it's a very important issue, but I think it depends on the people in charge, right? The people in charge, if they are aware of the need for evidence, because sometimes if you borrow something from, you hear they are doing it in another country, right? It might not necessarily be applicable in your country. What is the evidence in your own country? For example, most of these drugs approved by the FDA, some might not even be tried in your population, right? But it just come in, right? So stuff like NAFDAC, for example, what they do in the US FDA, NAFDAC might need to appraise certain, So, but with time, I think we'll get there, but the appropriate people being in, a position of authority would need to seek for those evidences.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yunusa. I'm going to go back to Dr. Okwaja now. Sir, is there any minimum at all for the number of publications that one must have to conduct systematic review?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Sani. As Dr. Yunusa said earlier, and I entirely agree with him, there is no, once you followed the systematic process and you conducted the search and you went through the process of the systematic review the right way, and you ended up with just one or two studies, that is what is there. So there's no minimum. The only thing you can report is that there are no either sufficient literature to, for example, perform a meta-analysis. So we only have two studies. One of the things, such studies, the importance of such systematic review is that it tells the world that we have only two literature, only two studies in this area. So more studies are needed. So if anyone is planning a study in that area, it gives him a solid background to justify the need for the new study. One other thing that cannot be performed once you have just one or two studies is meta-analysis. Meta-analysis require mathematically combining the findings of three or more studies to get a single estimate. When you have just two studies, then it doesn't make scientific sense combining them. And most softwares used for meta-analysis don't combine, are not able to provide an output once the number of studies are less than 3. So those are the things that, so there is no number of studies that are required in, the number of studies required to have a systematic review. Once you have 1 or 2, that once you're able to find only 1 or 2, it is what it is in the literature, provided the literature review or systematic literature search was well done and covered relevant databases where the studies published should appear. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kora. But quickly, let me build on that. You said even if one has 1 or 2, will it be worthwhile to conduct systematic review on just few, like 5, 6, articles?
Once you have, like I said earlier, once you're able to just find 1 or 2 at the end, it can actually be published. I have a friend that did a literature and published just 1 study and said only 1 study is available in this field. So there is no sufficient evidence needed. So you can publish it.
Hello? All right. Thank you,
Yeah,
Dr.
I'm hearing you.
Raja.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much. Dr. Yunisa, sorry, please, how can a researcher, a young scholar, apply systematic review to solve a particular research questions?
Okay, first he needs to determine a research question, right? One example of a research question is when you have 2 ways of doing things and there are conflicting evidence, right? And you would need to determine which is the best approach to do that thing. So that's your research question, right? Just as Dr. Ukwaja showed us the PICO, right? The patient, the intervention, the comparator, and the outcome. Those are elements of a good question, right? Those are in the context of the healthcare, but whatever context you are doing, right? What is, this approach versus that approach? Which one is more effective, efficient, however you call it? Then when you have a research question, then you assemble a team, right? Because it's not being done by yourself. How do I find those relevant studies? How I can find them is when they are being where they are being published, right? So where will I go is the bibliographic databases, PubMed, Scopus, Web of Sciences. And then you devise a search strategy, which might include the Booleans Dr. Ukwaja mentioned, where when I'm looking for Ismail, an article that has Ismail and Ukwaja, what connects those 2 words is an and. But if I'm looking for an article with Ismail or Ukwaja, then, what connects us is or. And you can even have a Boolean that is not. If you are looking for only Ismail, not Ukwaja, right? So now you search the articles. The next thing you do is to screen them based on a pre-specified inclusion and exclusion criteria. So then sometimes the screening are in 2 steps. You screen the title, an abstract, which is quicker, right? Then you go on to the full text, which you might need to read the whole article. Then you extract the data. When you extract the data, that's when you make a determination whether I can qualitatively pool using a systematic review approach, qualitatively describe, or quantitatively pool using the meta-analytical approach. And as Dr. Ukwaja mentioned, it involves more sophisticated statistical approach than just qualitatively describing something. I hope I've answered.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yeah, you did actually. Thank you very much, Dr.
You're welcome.
Sorry, but you said something earlier. You said when you want to do a systematic review, you might need to get a team. So I'm asking, and you said something like you may also need a librarian.
Yes.
So let me ask, will it be all right if the librarian asks to be as part of your author? in that particular publication? Will it be,
yes, that's
will
a
it be
very
ethical?
yeah. So I actually learned systematic review in graduate school. And we are usually being referred to a librarian when we need the search, right? And some of those are highly knowledgeable, even with the content, subject matter. So they can contribute to the paper. So I have been in a systematic review where a librarian is part of the co-authors. So that's possible. And that librarian knows the subject very well. I think they are one of the most knowledgeable people I know. So yes, they can be part of the co-authors.
That's interesting. That's interesting. So Dr. Okwaja, so this one is actually for you. We understand that you have a lot of citations, over 61,000 citations if I'm correct. So I would like to ask, how does somebody who has that much citation, avoid being self-plagiarism if he has to do systematic in his own area?
Thank you very much. As we've mentioned earlier, are you hearing me, please?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so thank you very much. As I mentioned earlier, systematic review follows a systematic process. If I have original studies, that is original work in the area, even if I have 10 original work in the area with different authors, maybe involving different countries, it could be included in the systematic review and meta-analysis. But because the introduction section, method section, even the results and discussion section are likely to be different than any of the original studies, it's not likely that there will be a lot of self-citation. Though you will there's going to be self-citation, but there wouldn't be plagiarism in the essence of it, because you are not copying any of the original work, but you are trying to create a new work involving previously published studies in that area, both by you and other authors in the field. And one thing I've come to see that systematic review does, especially if you are working in a narrow area, like I'm mainly into respiratory health, TB and respiratory diseases, that even in conferences, you come to meet individuals that you are citing their work and you are referring to their work when you are doing meta-analysis. And when you are making even presentation in conferences, you are in the same room with them. I know it got to a point, many of them thought I'm an old man because they felt maybe I have done a lot of work in an area they worked on during their master's and their PhD. So that is something that, so there won't be, it's not self-citation, it's not a plagiarism, but there's likelihood of both self and cross citation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Kwai. I think that clarifies that particular issue. So I'm going to go to Dr. Yunusa again. Sorry, Dr. Yunusa, can someone, a researcher, validate hypothesis using systematic review?
Yes, especially when the systematic review involves a meta-analysis. Because in meta-analysis, it's more of an inferential statistics, right? Let me go back to Dr. Ukwaja's presentation where you had VIOX and cardiovascular diseases, right? The null hypothesis may be VIOX does not cause cardiovascular, it's not associated with cardiovascular disease. An alternative hypothesis will be VIOX is associated with cardiovascular disease outcomes, myocardial infarction. So now, when you do a meta-analysis, then you saw that VIOX is associated with cardiovascular diseases. You have tested that hypothesis. And when you look at his forest plot, when when the line does not cross 1, which is a line of no difference, right? Means it's statistically significant. You're making an inference now, you're testing a hypothesis, right? When the line crosses 1, you say, which is because that's, I think, is it a relative risk or odds ratio? So that means there are no difference because the level of your confidence can include a line of no difference, right? So practically in a meta-analysis, you're testing a hypothesis.
That's true. That's true. That's true. I think I agree with that. So, so in that, let me build on that. In that, how do you minimize bias?
So now, if within the context of testing a hypothesis, now I have found that Vioxx is associated with advanced cardiovascular outcomes. But you brought so many studies, right, together. Now you might test for heterogeneity, right? Then when you determine there are lots of heterogeneous studies, right? And within those heterogeneous studies, then you might it might be biased. Maybe these people are more older, right? So now you might explore why are the sources of those heterogeneities, right? So that may need a further maybe subgroup analysis by age group, by gender. You know, some diseases, some adverse outcomes are more on women, right? So those are ways you might explore whether it's biased towards a certain category of people. Within the context of a systematic review, you appraise articles. You test the risk of bias in included articles. For example, in using the Cochrane use of risk of bias tool. So in that way, you would see what they call, you might do a sensitivity analysis, right? Is my conclusion being influenced by studies with high risk of bias or low risk of bias, right? So yeah, so there are follow-on explorations where you would, but the nice thing is you follow a systematic process of identifying those articles. That also minimizes bias than you cherry pick from articles in just a narrative review. Thank you.
True. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Maybe let me quickly ask you the last one. Which software will you recommend, most especially for meta-analysis?
Yeah, for meta-analysis, there is this comprehensive meta-analysis. It's not free. One may need to. There's Stata you need subscription to. R is open source. If you love programming, I like it. So you can explore using R. It's open source. And I think there are a couple other, I don't know about, I have never used them, but I believe there are other free meta-analysis software nowadays. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So Dr. Okwaja, please I think this will probably be the last one that I'm going to be asking you. So in this particular area that we are discussing today, which is systematic review, do you know any other experts, on this particular, methodology, if you like, that could come together and form, kind of develop a protocol that we can use in the country? The idea is that so that they come together and probably, help young researchers, Okay.
Yes, I think if you search the word systematic review in PubMed, I have seen a lot of groups in Enugu, some in the Southwest, particularly Lagos, Ibadan, where they've worked on systematic reviews. There is even the Cochrane group that Dr. Yunus have been mentioning. They have they now have it used to be a Nigerian branch, but it's now a Nigerian center in Calabar. The problem with the Cochrane review process is that it requires, you have to get a title, what they call a title. It's actually a research question that they agree with. Register it before you can be a member. And once you become a member, they get other groups that you will need. You might get you will get the benefit of having access to the Cochrane librarian who might do the search and other experts who are good, for example, in meta-analysis. So the group, my understanding is they have some restriction, more like in getting people, because you have to get a topic they are interested in and they accept the title before you can start working on the review. But by and large, there are a lot more groups are doing systematic review in Nigeria. Some of us, like myself, I'm willing to help and collaborate with any group or any member in Nigeria, any members members who are interested in Nigeria to work on different systematic review. I've also offered support to researchers through the author8.info website to researchers in other parts of Africa who are doing either reviews or original studies. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Okwaya. Sorry, do they have like a website where we can share with our audience?
Which
the one in Calabar?
Yes, I think we can get that. They used to have a site. Yes, they used to have a site. I'm not sure. I've not gone there the last year or two, but they have a site, and I used to get their. I tried registering a title sometime 12 years ago, so it was a bit difficult for me. So, but I still get their newsletter.
Okay. So sorry, let me ask. When you say title, what exactly do you mean?
I mean, in the Cochrane systematic review group, they work with the research question is called a title. Okay. So it's a group that do systematic reviews. They are in the UK and in different. The Nigerian branch used to be a branch of the South African Cochrane group. So usually you have to get a title. You have to get a research question or a systematic review topic. Let me use a more plain language that the group is interested in before you join.
Okay.
You understand? You have to get a topic, send it to them, try to see if they are interested in that topic or the area they are covering. If they are interested in the topic, they register you. You can now start working as part of the group, working on the research topic or the systematic review topic as part of the Cochrane group in Calabar, in the university. I think it should be University of Calabar, Institute of Tropical Diseases. But I'll get the website and share with us later.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Okwaja. And again, thanks a lot, Dr. Yunusa, for attending to the questions.
Can I add something? Just a second.
Okay.
Yeah, adding to the previous question, when we just talked about Cochrane, one other software is the RevMan by the Cochrane collaboration. And I think it's free, but I'm not sure if you need to be a Cochrane member to access it or not, but it's free, RevMan.
Okay. Thank you very much, Editor. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So thanks a lot. I think for me, these are the questions that I have. So we're going to go to the audience now and see whether we have some questions that we can throw to our speakers, so that they can share some, some of the insight that they have on those questions. So I'm just going to scroll through the Q&A now and see if we could find some that we could pick, and our speakers will attend to them. So somebody asked here that I think I'll go to Dr. Okwaja, or if Dr. Yunusa also wants to, jump in, that would be okay. So Dr. Okwaja, somebody was asking, what kind of software can we use to reduce duplicates when we search for literature in conducting systematic review?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I didn't want us to go into too much software, but if you are using a reference manager like EndNote or even Mendeley, you can be able to sort. If you are pulling all the studies using those reference manager, you can be able to detect and remove duplicates using them. But I felt I glanced through that part of the presentation. So some of the reference managers we use, particularly EndNote, I'm sure I've used before to remove duplicates. Maybe Dr. Yunusa will have one or two things to chip in here.
Okay.
Yes, I think I have used EndNote. Those reference managers work. Sometimes even within Excel, you can, depending on how savvy you are with Excel, you should be able to identify certain duplicates. But I think I highly recommend the reference managers. And some of the softwares I listed, Covidence, right? Okay. Distiller, Rayan, all of those, especially the ones that are free, you can remove duplicates from them using them. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Yunusa and Dr. Okwaja. Sorry, somebody's asking here in the name of Oju Ibo. He's saying that beside Cochrane and Prospero, which other platform can we register protocols? Dr. Kwaja, you can go if you, if you like.
Thank you very much. I think it's better to register in Prospero. That's the one I know it's free, even though it might require some steps up to within 2 weeks to a month to register. But I think that is the most popular one globally right now. I don't know, and Cochrane is good too, but it's for those who are members. I don't know of any other international register for systematic reviews, particularly in the health sciences. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Yunza, anything that you want to
I
share?
also do not know any within the health sciences. An alternative is publishing it, for which the journals I have seen that accept those are more open access, like the BMJ Open. And there's a journal called, I think, Systematic Reviews. So you could see people publish a protocol there, but they are open access. Nice. So you may need to pay some thousands, except if they waive the APC, depending on your location, I think.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yunisa.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Let me see whether we have some other questions here in the chat box. For those of us that are asking from the audience whether they could share the PowerPoint, I'm sure this is recorded, so and it will be uploaded on the YouTube channel, so you could go there and check.
Doc, there are a lot of questions there.
Okay, so sorry, can you?
If you cannot see, maybe
I can see, but some of them have already been answered, so I don't want to repeat it.
Okay, let me give an example. Somebody asked about what is a scoping review.
Okay, Dr. Kwaja.
Thank you very much.
Oh, Dr. Yunisa.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me just briefly.
Thank you, Dr. Awa.
Let me chip a brief about scoping reviews. From the word scoping, it just means you are looking at everything. So this brief thing that once it comes to scoping review, the thing that comes to mind is mapping. So if I'm doing a scoping review on tuberculosis, I'm doing a map on everything that has been done on tuberculosis. So what studies have been done on diagnosis, what has been done on treatment, what has been done on detection. So that is scoping review. It's not like a single research question, but more like a mapping of what has been done in an area of study. It's also a type of review to say a lot of studies have been done in this area about this topic, but very few have touched on this. Maybe a lot of studies have been done on diagnosis and how to detect this disease, but very few have been done on treatment. As far as this scoping review is mentioned, what comes to mind is mapping of the study area. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Yunza, anything you want to add to?
I think Dr. Ukwaja has explained it so well. I would just call it a preliminary assessment of potential size and scope of available literature in a certain field. That's how I can describe it. I would just like to mention there's another, there are lots of reviews, but of course we're focused on systematic review here. There's this, they call it umbrella review, where you review systematic reviews and meta-analysis. All right.
Okay.
And we recently done one, which we saw like the top 5 cardiology journals and appraise those systematic reviews and meta-analysis, their qualities. We found that only 58% even registered their protocols. So yeah, there are lots of other kinds of reviews that helps you also appraise high quality. You know, scoping may help you find a research question for potential systematic review, right? Then after systematic reviews. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me. This just came to me now. Sorry, if you see a particular systematic review, whereby you see something like citation, you see something like bibliographic coupling, you see co-citation, would that be meta-analysis? Dr. Yunisa, please. Will you call that meta-analysis?
No, except if they quantitatively pool the result of the studies they included in the systematic review.
Mm. Okay. Dr. Kwaja, you want to chip in?
So I think that Dr. Yunus have answered it. Once there is no mass, there's no statistical combination of study findings. Once you're just describing what was found, systematic review. Anything other than that, if you're able to combine it mathematically, that is a meta-analysis.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to go to another question here on the chat box. Somebody was asking that there are so many issues around colleagues who are always in a hurry to publish. And since systematic review takes a lot of time, how do you address that? Dr. Yunus, please.
I think, in my opinion, there is no hurry in research, right?
Exactly.
Otherwise, it will be biased.
Exactly.
So it really has to be systematic. You might be hurried to publish something, but it's worth publishing something good, of high quality, free of bias. So I just recommend one should follow the protocol of conducting a systematic review and meta-analysis. Depending on the time you invest, you might be faster than another person, right? And I like that Gantt chart in Dr. Ukwaja. You have a plan, from this month to that month, from day this to day that, what I would be able to accomplish. So just follow the rules. And if you happen to get it earlier than another person, fine. But all those race in publishing and not caring about the quality, and it's your name that goes there forever. Thank you.
That's true. Thanks a lot. Dr. Kwaja, you want to add to that, please?
Yeah, thank you very much. I agree totally with what he has said. And like you said, it's your name that goes there. If you do a low quality job, you'll be associated with low quality. Even if the individual ended up publishing first in a very low quality journal, and you send yours to a high quality journal, outlining all the key steps up to the point of submission, it's likely that the work will still be accepted. And even if a reviewer raises it, you will show that that individual rushing to publish did a very low quality job, maybe looked at one or two databases, missed more than 70% of the studies that are available in the literature. Once you say a systematic review missed more than 70 or 60% of the studies that are available, which you've not included, then there is no argument that whatever was done in a hurry, and they have probably gotten his very low quality paper published in one of the predatory journals, but you also end up getting your work in a high quality journal where it's going to attract lots of interest and citations. Thank you.
So I may need to add on this for a few minutes, for a few seconds. There's what within the field called publication bias, where you only publish studies that are being published, but there are some studies that are unpublished. So you may even miss, when you're in a hurry, you miss studies that are published, and you may not attempt to find unpublished studies, right? You might find some of them, maybe it's in a journal proceeding and it never got to, conference proceed, it never got to a full article. You may need to reach out to those authors, right, to find information about that. Because lots of unpublished studies might also be good, but because the finding is not, that interesting, and it might not be accepted in a journal, or authors might not even publish it, maybe there's no statistically significant difference, right? And sometimes they find it hard to publish it. So not just finding even available studies, it's good to look for unpublished, at least you make an attempt. So in some of these systematic reviews, you will see the authors mentioned, we reach out to authors of, even the studies you found, you selected. There might be insufficient information that you might need to, refer to the authors to find it. So this is what I just needed to add.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nita. What you just said now, made me realize something. At times I've read some systematic reviews whereby somebody will write, or an author will write and say, okay, this is limited to peer-reviewed journals. Would that be okay? So meaning I'm not going to go to conference proceedings. I'm not going to go to other great literature. I'm just going to stick with peer-reviewed journals. Would that be fine?
I think when it comes to reviewing, it's very good you look for all available evidence, right? But one drawback about an article that is not published in a peer-reviewed full, well, you might doubt its transparency, right? And maybe by the time you appraise it, it's of low quality. Yeah. Or maybe it's just an abstract from a conference that has been published. And you might, within the systematic review, you might need to assess the quality of the study. It's hard to assess just looking at an abstract, right? Mm-hmm. You might need to do a risk of bias assessment. You need to know the details of the methodology within the full text article. So that's what I think.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we are rounding up now. We have like maybe 8 minutes left. Right, Mr. Dr. Ibrahim?
No, I think we can proceed. I think we have very good questions and we have some time. We can proceed.
So let me share this with our speakers. There's one here that says, can meta-analysis stand alone, or it has to be part of systematic review? Dr. Okwaja.
Sorry, what's the name?
The name is Yemi Ogun.
Okay.
He's asking, can meta-analysis stand alone, or should it be part of systematic review? I would like Dr. Okwaja to respond to that.
Thank you very much. If it is well done, in itself, before you get to the point of meta-analysis, you must have done a systematic review.
Exactly.
At least in identifying the studies, in selecting the studies, in selecting high quality studies. So meta-analysis, before you get to the point of meta-analysis, you should have done a systematic review. That is the ideal thing. However, I also wanted to maybe add to what Dr. Yunus mentioned earlier. In areas where there are lots of studies, like you mentioned about some individuals insisting that they're restricting themselves to papers that are published in peer-reviewed journal. In an area where maybe there are over 100 studies in a topic and no meta-analysis has been done, is a good candidate for both the meta-analysis and subgroup analysis. You can, after analyzing all what you have in the literature, you can also do the meta-analysis according to the study design. Those that are randomized controlled trials will be do meta-analysis for them separately than those that are descriptive studies, that is cohort or case control studies. You do a separate meta-analysis. But then it allows you to look at various subgroups, look at by region, for example. In one of the meta-analysis we did look at by region, the northern and southern parts of Nigeria, by gender and by age group. So that is what a strength that the meta-analysis can give you if you have a large pool of studies from the systematic review. But you can't do meta-analysis alone without, in essence, going through the process of systematic review. Even though you can, while trying to publish it, you can decide to remove the systematic review and just call it a meta-analysis, especially if you are focused on a key research question. Is this a cause of this, a meta-analysis, so that everybody knows that the whole focus of your work is on this topic. And then there are situations also, for example, where there are very few studies, different parts of the world where there are studies that are on very few common, the population is very small. We can do what we call individual patient meta-analysis. It will involve combining studies that have been published, but also looking at the primary data to get more information about the individual patients included in the meta-analysis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Okwaja. I don't know whether Dr. Yunus also want to add something to that.
Yes, I think I agree with Dr. Okwaja. The point to note is when you don't have a systematic process of selecting studies, then your studies will be biased. Whatever meta-analysis you do will be biased. You might just pick the study you think you are. But there's an exception I can think of. When antipsychotics got a label that they are associated with a risk of death, black box warning, they call within prescribing information by the US FDA. So because the US FDA had all of the trials that has been conducted, right, for antipsychotics used to treat symptoms of psychosis in patients with dementia. So they pooled all of the studies and made that findings. So they are, all available studies are at their disposal because you need to submit studies for the sake of regulatory approval. So in that case, they have all of the studies. So they pooled it and made that finding.
Okay, that's true. That's true. That could be an exception. That's true. So there's other question here. Somebody was asking, I'm sure this is probably one of our young scholars. He's asking, what are the implications of downloading closed access journals behind paywalls using Sky-Hub?
In fact,
sorry, you want to go?
Sorry, about four questions in that area. That's why I think it's very important we answer it. Another also just ask the same thing. Please, what's the implication of downloading closed access using Sky-Hub for your review? About three questions on the same subject.
Yeah. Sorry, before you go, Dr. Okwaja, let me also bring this maybe just like a background. I don't know. I think the name is Yunus Adamu Wada. He might be a young scholar. So, sir, I think I would like you to use your experience to, try to explain to them, the essence of using appropriate quarters to get journals, so that there's probably a young scholar who doesn't know exactly what it means to go to Sky-Hub to download, journals. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, there are some questions that are left to individuals' conscience, but the right thing to do is to use appropriate quotas, appropriate sources to contact friends. Some have had to contact friends, but most times, rather than going through that illegal processes of getting publication, you can send an email to the authors. In all the time I've sent an email to the authors of a paper that have been interested in a PDF version or the original version or their full text, I've received the copy of the manuscript from their authors are usually very happy to share their work with you. Alternatively, if you have friends who are studying in universities where they have subscription to some of these databases, you can also send them emails requesting for such articles. I think this is something that NIA also can consider to help young scholars, because I remember joining one or two groups some years past. Okay, yeah, it's a group called Nigerian Biomedical Life Sciences, started by one of my friends, a veterinarian who is in the UK, where if you need publications in the medical, biomedical, and life sciences, all you need to do is request. Our colleagues who are working in different parts of the world, in the US, in the UK, who have access within 24, latest 48 hours, they are provided with a copy of the paper. I think those are the right things. You see, the problem with Nigeria that we get away with a lot of things, and we may want to try this even when we're outside our environment, trying to use the Sky-Hub and whatever means. But the ideal process is to go through the right channels, which is either to contact the author of the work or contact colleagues that have access to databases where they can get access to the research paper. Then that should be the ideal process and more clear conscience. But apart from that, you can also try ResearchGate. Some of this work, after a year or within a year, in fact, some journals allow you to upload the non-edited version of the work, provided it's funded by some of the funding agencies demand that the work is open access, the non-edited version. So you can go through ResearchGate too and get access to the original papers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Yunusa, please, you may also want to add to that.
Yeah, I think I have nothing to add. Dr. Ukwaja said my mind. Spoke my mind. I think left to your conscience.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Let me also add that just like Dr. Ukwaja said, we have colleagues outside the country who have access to those subscription-based journals. What you can do again is to write your search criteria. You could write it and send it to your colleague outside the country. Then they could help you search and get some of those publications out. That's one way again to get access to some of the publications, because I know when you're conducting systematic review, it's very difficult because you need access to so many journals, so to say. So what you can do is to get a search criteria ready, send it to your friend outside the country, then he may help you, do that, conduct the search, and send the result back to you. Then, as Dr. Okwaya said, I found the ResearchGate very, very useful. In many instances, they respond. When you mail an author, say, sir, please, I need this, I need access to this, your article, they give it to you. They would just, maybe with a caveat saying, please don't share it, don't put it in the public domain, or don't share it with friends. They tell you that. But beside that, they allow you to use the article. So I think it's important for our young scholars to use appropriate quarters to get their articles or journals. Thank you. So let me see. Somebody is also asking here that what would you recommend in conducting historical events or past studies? I guess he's talking about maybe meta-analysis or systematic review. That when you are doing when you are trying to conduct studies around historical events, what kind of methodology would you recommend?
I don't know. I don't know. I think this should be more of a narrative review, since we are looking at history. But I don't know. I've not seen systematic reviews that are purely on historical events in the past. I think it's going to be difficult to frame that type of research question or the review question. So it's likely that the individual will, since it's a review of historical event, might likely to follow historical methods, that is, a narrative methods in explaining or in writing up such review articles. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kwaja. Dr. Yunza?
There's this thing they call bibliometric analysis. I never explored it, but somebody might Google and see how, but it helps you establish a trend. Within meta-analysis, there's what they call the cumulative meta-analysis, as in what Dr. Ukwaja showed for Vioxx. You can see it from a trend from the earlier study until that, a study. So if it's a cumulative in terms of it starts from the earliest, you keep adding to that study. You keep adding, and that's why it showed that Vioxx should have been, should have been discontinued earlier than it was discontinued. So I think exploring a trend within meta-analysis by adding study by study, you see how, evidence accumulates. Might be something, but I think his question is more of the bibliometric analysis than what I'm saying.
I see. Okay. Thank you very much. There's another question here from Saman Sulaiman. He's asking that how does someone reshape his research topic after finding out that somebody else is working on that particular topic? Dr. Kwaja, you want to go?
Okay, thank you very much. How does one reshape his research topic? Let's assume you have seen what the other person has done. You've seen what the other person has done, and there are weaknesses. That is, there are limitations. For example, someone stole your idea. Let me use it in quotes. But you are the owner of the idea. You had more details of what you want to cover with the idea. So in reshaping your work, you have to highlight why your work is better or an improvement over what has already been published by by that other person. I remember working on a systematic review. One of the systematic reviews we did earlier showed that while a lot of studies have been done on cost of TB, none have explored catastrophic costs, which is something that can cripple, what is it called, the family of an individual affected by TB. At the end of the review, I proposed that this concept should be introduced in TB research. And with that week, the work was published. I got messages from more than 5 different scholars, all working on different type of TB. Because I was also doing a similar study in Nigeria, but I can tell you they all beat me to publishing that work on catastrophic cost of TB. At least 1 or 2 of them beat me to publishing it as the first author, even though I recommended it in a systematic review. But because I was the one who proposed it, I had more ideas on different concepts around that. And I included them in my work to say this is, even though one or two persons have done limited studies on the same topic, but these are the ways it is better. My own work is better on improvement to what is available in the literature, and it's so true. So in reshaping your work basically is to identify both the weaknesses and the limitations of what is available in the literature and build on that. So if you are doing your work and it has already been covered, that means you have to look for a way to either strengthen it, or I'm sorry, it might end up getting published in a local journal if you can't beat what is available in the literature. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kwaja. Dr. Yunusa, you want to add to that?
No, I think Dr. Kwaja has done justice to it.
Okay, very nice. So let me ask. This is from Sado Ibrahim. He's asking that how does somebody, a scholar, properly cite his research work? I think he's probably asking about citation, or references, I guess. Dr. Kwaja, please.
Well, how does someone properly?
You seems to. Be okay, well, let's go to Dr. Yunusa. Sorry, Dr. Kwaja. Dr. Yunusa, please.
Well, yeah, this is less of a systematic review, meta-analysis, but a research thing. What I suggest is, we tend to, in order to increase our citations, we tend to search our, work. But I just advise you need to justify, does it fit into the current work you're citing your work or not? That's what I advise, you should consider, and not have that kind of image that, okay, I always cite my work, I always find a place for my work. Is it worth citing there or not? And sometimes it looks bad on the eye of certain peer reviewers. I think some peer review guidelines will tell you, is there any unnecessary self-citation or not? And a peer reviewer might point it out. So yeah, just make sure you're citing because you need to cite.
Right.
Okay, I think that makes a lot of sense. Dr. Kwaya, do you want to add or you?
Yeah, sorry, Doctor. Let's proceed. There are other questions. I think about 7 more questions. Can you see them?
Dr. Awa, can you maybe read one of them out? I can't see anyone.
Okay, maybe you can see them. Okay, let me read. This one asks that does it mean systematic review and meta-analysis are the same, or what are the differences? About 2 people asked the same question, so that's why the other one say, can the presenters elaborate more on the methodology of systematic reviews and meta-analysis, just briefly, because you have exhausted it.
Well, thank you very much. From the presentations we made, and particularly the one by Dr. Yunusa, he outlined the steps, and you can see according to the number of steps that you get to a certain point where more or less systematic review ends and the meta-analysis part begins. They are not the same. One stops at the description or narrative description of the study findings, of the findings of the review. The other ones involve quantitative synthesis of inferential statistics to combine the findings of the studies that were included in the review. That is the meta-analysis. Okay, then for the methodology, I've outlined some steps. The most important step is to have a research question and develop a protocol. Well, have a research question and form a team. A team of 3 should be ideal, at least 2 junior and 1 experienced reviewer to guide them. Form a team, work on a research question and develop a research protocol. Basically, a small background, what is the inclusion and the exclusion criteria, then how will you assess for the how will you do the data extraction? How will you assess for the quality of the studies? Dr. Yunusa has kept mentioning about risk of bias, the same thing as assessing quality of studies. So how do you assess the quality of studies that you are including in the review? How do you intend to combine the studies? And then if you will do, whether or not you will do a meta-analysis. And as mentioned by Dr. Maruf earlier on, even before publishing this protocol, or even the review at the end, you will need to go through what they call the PRISMA statement, the preferred reporting format of systematic reviews and meta-analysis called PRISMA. It has a statement that it has a checklist that outlines what each subsection of the review should contain. And you should identify it in that checklist. Some journals require you to identify where you met each of those requirements of the PRISMA guidelines. But most importantly, you will need some help, at least to do your first systematic review. Or subsequently, it's something you will learn on the job. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And then let me also yeah. Okay. Dr. Yunusa.
I think Dr. Ukwaja has said in mind, you have to follow a systematic process to identify articles. Okay. Then at a point in time, you make a determination whether I quantitatively pull or not. If I can quantitatively pull, it's a systematic review, right? Just qualitatively describe. If I quantitative pull, that's a meta-analysis.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Yunusa. There's one here. I think this has also been treated, but I will ask all the same because it's asking that what is the impact of systematic review when you compare them to original experimental paper or research? Why, with regards to academic promotions? Sorry, Dr. Yunusa.
Okay. Well, I'm not that much familiar with the academic promotion a lot back home. But where you consider a systematic review or meta-analysis and original research, then of course it should count original study, as some journals do. Dr. Ukwaja mentioned that. Then it should count in your promotion. And when you're looking about the pyramid of evidence, it's at the top because you bring together everything. So in most medical literature, they talk about the pyramid of evidence, right? Which could start from a case report, reporting on just one patient, case series of patients, right? Then maybe a case control, which just this person who has the disease, this who does not, is it associated with a certain exposure or not? Cohort, you have a cohort of individuals, you follow them up, right? To assess a certain outcome. Then you have a randomized trial. And when you do a systematic review of all those primary, studies, so it's at the high top of the ladder in terms of evidence, because you bring together everything.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yunusa. Dr. Kwaja.
Yeah.
Sorry, sir. Okay.
Well, I think Dr. Yunusa have answered on my I agree totally with what he has to say. It's just that it depends on what the academic promotion and appraisal system in the university where we work. But in most places, even abroad now, they consider systematic review and meta-analysis as an original study and is rated as such. So thank you.
Sorry, Dr. Maruf, there is this question I mistakenly transferred to answered. That's why I want to bring it. Maybe to Dr. Yunusa. This person asked, is it possible to have a hybrid of a systematic and narrative review?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. I think there are two different things.
Okay.
So yeah, there are two different things. Narrative is biased, right? So it can be a hybrid? It cannot be a hybrid, yes.
True.
Well, okay, let me just chip in a bit here. While what Dr. Yunusa said is very correct, some people end up writing things like systematic overview. These are where you see, so you see systematic overview. These are studies that are trying, they know that they didn't do the right thing to call it a systematic review, and they don't want to remove the word systematic too. So you see things like systematic overview. So,
Okay, so sorry, Dr. Awa, do you have any other question there?
Yeah, I think that's all, except that we need to inform people there's someone that is adding some information. Maybe we may need to inform others, and then of course the speakers, that he said that joining Cochrane group is necessary if one plans to publish in Cochrane library, and an author can still use review manager without participating in Cochrane groups. So I think we should tell the audience what he wrote. And then you also added that, please, if I may add, instead of Picos spider, is used for history-related topics. I'm sorry, I didn't understand this. Maybe the experts can shed more light, but that is what you wrote.
Well,
And
I think
that's all. We have exhausted almost everything.
I think
Sorry.
What the participant was trying to say.
Okay.
Hello?
Oh yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I think what he was trying to say is that beside PICOs, that one could use spider when it comes to analyzing or carrying out systematic review of historical events. That's what he was trying to say.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I think that's all.
Maybe in addition, I promise that I will send a reference to the Prisma protocol. I already sent it to everyone, so it should be in the chat box now.
Okay, yeah, and also Dr. Ismail has also shared some information, right, about bibliometric analysis.
Okay, that's
good. Also on the chat box. I think I'm copying and then I will share with the audience. And I think by and large, I think we have exhausted almost all the questions.
Okay, so I think we can be rounding up now.
Yeah.
So let me thank all our two speakers for a wonderful, well-detailed, presentation that they've just given us today. We really appreciate your time because we know you are very busy. Taking time out of your busy schedule to come to us to give us this wonderful presentation, we all appreciate it. So thank you very much, Dr. Yunusa. Thank you very much, Dr. Okwaja. We really appreciate you. We believe that when we call you some other time, you will also, come to us and give us, a wonderful presentation as you just did. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Let me also thank Nigerian Young Academy for giving me this opportunity to moderate this particular webinar. I thank you very much. I thank Dr. Obetukun, as well as Dr. Ibrahim and all the other, team members of this particular, organizing committee for the webinar. Thank you very much. So I think this is where I'm going to hand over to Dr. Awa to run it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sani. It's been a very wonderful webinar. Somebody posted just to me that we have a very great outing today, and truly I'm also saying that we indeed have a very great outing. To Dr. Ismail Yunusa, thank you so much. It's very early down there, I'm sure, and you woke up and then try to be with us this morning, your morning. And thank you so much on behalf of the Nigerian Young Academy we thank you profoundly for taking time to be with us to share so many things with the Nigerian young researchers. But I will ask you one last question. I wanted to ask you, I don't know how I missed it. Are you willing, because we are interested in mentoring young researchers, are you willing, and to Dr. Kingsley, please, are you guys willing to mentor young researchers in towards systematic review and meta-analysis?
First of all, I appreciate the invitation. I think I enjoyed my time with all of you. Thank you so much. I am willing, because I have been mentored by another person, for me to be fortunate to come here and talk to you. So I would love, this is a way of giving back to my society.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I mentioned earlier that I'm available and I'll be very happy.
Oh, thank you so much.
That is also one of the secrets to having many publications. If you mentor 20 young scholars and they all publish their work, you have 20 more papers.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, thank you so much. And like I said, on behalf of the Nigerian Young Academy, we say thank you. In fact, I don't know the right words to thank you. This is the first webinar in 2021, and you guys did a very a great job for us. We are very grateful. Now to the audience, so many people have requested for the video recording. I will request you to kindly send the request to some actually requested for the presentation. For the presentation letter, I will seek the permission of the speakers, which I hope they will grant, for me to share the presentation with you. Once they do that, I'm going to share it with you. But before that, kindly send the request to my email, which is MAUWAL Ibrahim, IBRAHIM at gmail.com.
Just type it in the chat box.
Yeah.
Dr. Awa.
Yeah. The last time they said I didn't type properly, that's why. So please kindly send it to my email address, and I'm going to respond to you to give you the presentation and the recordings. And with this, we say thank you so much. Our next webinar is going to be in April, next 2 months, and we are also going to invite very prominent and high quality scholars like we had today to give us a very stimulating talk on our next topic. Once again, thank you to the speakers, Dr. Maruf. Thank you so much to all members of the webinar committee. Thank you so much to speakers, especially the speakers, of course. Dr. Kingsley, we thank you, even though you are part of us, a member of the academy, and then Dr. Ismail Yunusa, extremely grateful for your presentation. Thank you so much. And with this, we say bye-bye and God bless.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.